Hello, I just wanted to make a quick video on my motor upgrade for my mini lathe. I have a 1/2 horsepower fully enclosed motor, and I just wanted to go over what I did to make it possible. It's a fairly sizable project and requires a few sacrifices. To begin with, the pulley is mounted to the spindle shaft, and in doing so, I have deactivated the old motor, and it is not able to use the power feed. If I so desire to use the power feed, I can easily take this apart and hook it up to the way it is. The old motor is still fully engaged, but it is in neutral. To start, I bought a V-belt pulley from my local hardware store, 3/4 ID, 2.5 inch OD. This is what I used for both. Well, actually this is a 5/8 shaft, but both 2.5 inch pulleys, a 1700 RPM motor, so a 1700 RPM spindle. And so I obviously had to machine this to fit this lathe. First thing I did was I installed a second set screw in the V-belt channel, just right here. That is critical for the machining process. Second thing I did was I put a piece of stock in here, and then I put the pulley in there. So the pulley would be like this, and I put it only halfway through, and I put the leftmost set screw that you can see here on. Once that was on, I machined the pulley, this face, so that it would clear the spacer on the spindle. I also enlarged the OD to fit the shaft. Now, once that is machined, that's this side, I will then take it off and put in a second bar stock and machine it to the spindle size, this spindle. Therefore, I can slide this halfway on and use the set screw that we had made before to hold it there. I will then machine this nub off and enlarge the hole and go deeper into the pulley. Now, since we are always holding the pulley on a perfectly centered shaft, the pulley will always stay centered. And the reason this is important is because the only reference I was able to find was the hole made by the pulley, hole made on the pulley when it was new. If I were to put the pulley in the chuck, I did it before, but it didn't turn out very well. It just wasn't really lined up vertically and was wobbly. I also drilled a hole from front to back through the pulley so I could see how much metal was left so I didn't go the entire way through. You do get moderately close, but there still is ample room. Here's an example of what one of my test pulleys looked like that didn't turn out very well. You can see how I have to enlarge everything and enlarge. I'll show you a side by side of the old pulley. Once the pulley was machined to size, I then had to use the milling techniques shown in previous videos to make a broach guide so I could broach a 4mm keyway through the pulley, which engages on the old sprocket keyway that was on the spindle, which would drive the power feed and the gearing. I decided to remove the power feed in order to have the 2 nuts here and ample thread engagement out the back. I chose to do this because I wasn't sure if a single nut would come loose or if it would be satisfactory. So I erred on the side of caution and did that. Now comes to the part of mounting the lathe. So to begin with, I have a 24 inch by 18 inch 1/4 inch steel plate. And as you can see, or you probably won't be able to see, but steel plate often comes with a bow in it. So mine actually has a bow that goes a bit like this without the lathe even on it, just a little bit. So I raised it off the ground with aluminum chunks, 1 inch by 1 inch square bar that you have seen in previous videos. And I just made it just off the ground a bit. Now, I also decided to put cork gaskets underneath the lathe. One other thing is, since my sheet is bent, if I put the 4 bolts on the lathe, bolt it down, either the sheet will bend to meet the lathe or the lathe will bend to meet the curvature of the sheet. I did not want to risk bending the lathe and throwing out my tolerances or even damaging it. So what I decided to do is just mount down the back with fender washers and bolts. So the back is firmly mounted. However, the front, while it does have bolts, they are not tight, as you can see here. They are just there to hold it in case for side-to-side movement. They don't clamp down at all. Moving back to the motor is on a rubber sheet to prevent any vibrations or possibly even corrosion.